Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love, y'all, and brother Ali. It's the Travelers Podcast. Thank you for being here. Live from Istanbul. Not live, I'm recording, but I am alive, mashallah. And I'm in Istanbul, alhamdulillah. And I feel alive. I feel good. I feel alive. I feel grateful. I know the last couple episodes of the podcast are me talking about some of the challenges, and those things are no joke, and it's not like they're over and that they're not done and they're still there. But I think it's important for, at least for me, to do that sometimes, because I don't do that to engender sympathy, although I think empathy is good when we just recognize and realize that other people are going through very difficult things, and a lot of times you would never know it. You know, you might see me on tour gallivanting on stage with DJ Abilities or Ant and feel like, you know, and this guy does what he loves for a living, and he lives in another country, and he got this dope wife and all these kids, and he's doing great, and I am. But also there's times where it's profoundly difficult, and you deserve to know about that, especially if we're going to ask you to participate in this, which you do. And, you know, not everybody might understand, but this thing between an independent artist and their listeners, especially the way that I've done it. This just feels like the natural path for me to just share with you and to be really real with you. So I almost feel like I owe it to us, to our bond, that when things are very difficult, that I'll let you know about that and try to just do it in a way that's very real, the same way we always do. And I think also the good thing about that is that we always get back to hope. I do. Ants, there's a thing on the new Satisfied Soul album. If you haven't heard the new Satisfied Soul album, go to brotherali.com and get it. It's really dope. An entire new album produced entirely by Ant from Atmosphere, who produced most of my albums that people seem to like the best. Shadows on the Sun, Undisputed Truth, Us, the Champion EP, Truth Is Here EP, All the Beauty in This Whole Life. He produced half of a project called The Bite Marked Heart, and he produced this brand new album called Satisfied Soul. Super dope. I love it to death. But there's a little section in there where there's a little part that says, somehow we always see hope. And that's a comment on, like, no matter what I go through, it always works out. And I'm always deeply hopeful through all of that. And of course I credit that to knowing the Creator and trusting the Creator and being pleased with whatever the Creator writes for us. And the way that I've been able to do that is through the religion of Islam. So very grateful, and I love you, and I'm so happy that you're here. This episode is really dope. This conversation is super dope. Imran Ali Malik is somebody I've known for like 10 years, and he's a really amazing person. He's one of these people that can get good at anything he decides to be good at. So before I met him, he was in a band, and he'll talk about that. He was in a punk band, an indie punk band, and was successful. And then he left the band, and he went to Zaytuna College to study there, to study Islamic theology and Sharia, which is like the course and like the legal understanding of Islam. And he did very well, and he graduated. And Imran also has an amazing career as a podcaster. Did a lot of work on the podcast that Dave Chappelle and Yassine Bey and Talib Kweli have together called The Midnight Miracle. He was one of the editors and producers of that podcast. And even now he has one related to his latest project, which is called Seeker's Coffee, and asking people, what are you seeking? So it's really in line with the Travelers Podcast. But anybody that knows me well knows that I send hours and hours of voice notes. And Imran was the person that said, yo, these voice notes need to be a podcast. You need to share you talking through stuff with the world. He said, at least for your fans, they would love it. And so he's the first person that actually encouraged me to do this podcast. So I've been wanting to have him on for a long time. Imran's latest project is called Seeker's Coffee. And seekers and travelers really go hand in hand. We have the same spiritual teachers and guides, and we study in the same traditions, in the same circles. And they're definitely inspired, influenced by, similar sort of sources. But what Imran is doing with Seeker's Coffee is really introduce it to people as a spiritual practice, as a meditative practice, as a revolutionary practice, as a social, economic, global justice project. One of the things I wanted to do with this episode is just kind of introduce specialty coffee to people who kind of feel like, I don't know about that. It seems, kind of bougie. I fully understand it and I fully get it. And one of the things that I love to do is talk to people about subjects that I care deeply about that seem inaccessible to people. And I know that Imran is on that page too. And so part of what we're doing here is trying to have a conversation around specialty coffee that can just open that door a little bit and be an invitation for people who might not be as up on that practice yet. So whether you've been flying around the globe trying to source the greatest beans and get the best brewers and all that kind of stuff, or if you drink that stuff they call coffee at most coffee shops and you put a bunch of stuff in it, either way, this is going to be a really beautiful conversation. And even if you're not interested in coffee at all, just following and tracking the life of a person who has dedicated themselves to trying to figure it all out and to do something beautiful and to leave behind a legacy of community and something beautiful is definitely worth the listen. And Imran is a podcaster, and so he's an expert, and he's definitely a better podcaster than I am. So it's really a trip trying to interview somebody who's a much more experienced interview than you are. But that's one of the beautiful things about friendship, about brotherhood, is that we encourage each other, we're mirrors for each other, and so I'm grateful to be able to do this. We're brought to you, as always, by the Zakat Foundation, Z-A-K-A-T. It's a global humanitarian organization, does dope work all over the world. It's Muslim-led, but they don't only help Muslims, they don't proselytize. It's enough for us to believe that every single human being is somebody that the Creator brought into being. It's like Allah made you. And so I'm here to share this life with you. And if we're in a position to do something for others, which most of us within the sound of my voice and the reach of my voice, most of us are. Most of us have a dollar that we can give to somebody and that might double their income for the day. My suggestion is go to Zakat US on social media, Z-A-K-A-T US on social media, or zakat.org, and just check out the programs that they do. Put something on something as you listen to this podcast. They're the ones that make sure that we've got a low budget so that we can do what we need to do. Please enjoy this conversation with my dear friend Imran Ali Malik of Seekers Coffee. Man, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it, especially I know how busy things have been for you lately.
It's a huge honor. Thank you for having me.
Especially because since the podcast started, you've changed careers. You've been dope at like 7 things that I could have interviewed you for. There's a few people that I know who almost have the gift and the curse of being able to be good at almost anything. It seems like for people like that, it's hard to figure out which one do I focus on.
That resonates.
So the earliest one that I know of is that you were in a band.
Mm-hmm.
What was the band about?
It was a Muslim punk band. And this is like 2005, the band starts. I joined in 2009, and I do it for 3 years. So it was called the Caminas. And if anyone wants to go down a rabbit hole, just Google Muslim punk and you'll find it.
Did you have anything to do with Michael Muhammad Knight's like punk Muslim?
Yeah, so he wrote a book called The Taqwa Cores, and that was a book imagining a Muslim punk scene. And then there was a bunch of these guys, people like myself, that had MySpace pages, and we were Muslims and we were making music. And this was a sort of category that we can all look at and say, hey, maybe we all fit this category. And so people started coming out of the woodwork and saying, hey, we're Taqwa Cores. And it was a little mini scene that developed in Canada, in Texas. This band was based in Boston. So yeah, it was a really crazy time. But yeah, Michael Muhammad Knight became a really good friend, and we toured a bunch and played a bunch of shows together where he'd speak and things like that. So that goes from 2008 to 2009 to 2012. Yeah.
Man, he is such a controversial person. And I had read so many things about him, just the wild ways that he would approach like scholars and things like that. And the way like he called out a bunch of white Muslims for different stuff. And one time I was in North Carolina and got word that he was going to come to a show and he wanted to interview me.
Oh, wow.
And man, I was on guard. I was like, man, I feel like anything could happen. I might end up fighting this dude. I have no clue. And he showed up and he was so sweet. And everything he wrote about me was so nice
Yeah.
that I was just like, is this the same Michael Muhammad Knight? Like, what? You know what I mean?
He is a very soft person. In actuality, very soft person. He has this persona because he's a big like wrestling fan. So he has this like fantasy persona that he puts on in his writing. But then you meet him, you're like, well, you're just like the sweetest guy ever.
In the band and in that scene that was developing, was Islam at the core or like involved in the lyrics?
Yeah.
Or were they just happen to be Muslims playing punk music?
No, it was. I mean, we were kind of in this situation where it was very much an exploration of an identity that was, on one hand, you have people calling Muslims terrorists, so we're kind of accepting that and making fun of it. So the first album's called Escape from Guantanamo Bay. There's songs on there like Sharia law in the USA. They're not devotional songs, but they are kind of exploring the category of being Muslim. And then sometimes there were actually some things that were almost heretical. I mean, definitely heretical. And it was like, okay, we're not ready to give up the identity of Muslim, but we also it doesn't fully resonate with us at the same time. That was kind of the positioning of where the band was. And you can imagine the media loved it. So we were on the news all the time for a couple of years.
Did the Muslim community ever embrace it though? Like there was some sort of embrace of like some sort of Islamic hip hop scene. I think they were quicker to resonate with like Dean Squad and Native Dean and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But was there any sort of embrace from the Muslim community, or were you just
not in the mainstream? But what I did love about it was that whenever we tour, we would meet people with complicated relationships to Islam. And those were both people coming into Islam and people like on the outs of Islam, which was really cool when I look back on it, because that's a category of people that don't really have community. And so by creating this kind of art, it was a magnet for those people that would just come out, and you'd meet such interesting people. I've never met them since then. And some people even said to me that, later on that they converted because of the band, because they were like coming from a punk background and like, we saw your band and it made me feel like there's a space for me in this community, which is crazy to hear, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know that a lot of my earlier music, like people might see me now. It's funny, I just reposted this stuff from yesterday in Istanbul. They're like all week, actually. Abdul Karim Cederberg and another sheikh are doing this whole series about beauty in Islam. And like you go in there and everybody's got like rulers and compasses, and they're like recreating the designs from the doors of like great mosques and things like that. And then he had me come and talk. And I had to tell everybody, like, if you go search my music from anything before 2017, you're going to hear the language of the community that I was in. You're not going to hear some. And some of it, especially like live footage and battles and stuff like that, like when I see and hear myself from that time, I'm just like, man, I have to really remember what it was like to be that guy and to be in that position. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that way when you listen to your music?
Yeah. I mean, it's almost hard to relate to be honest. Mm-hmm. But in recent times, when I've looked back on it, I appreciate the parts of it that were sincere, and I appreciate the experiences. I also appreciate, getting to know someone like Amir Suleiman. We like performed together a bunch, which was crazy. He was the same with me then as he is now. Mm. It's something that I think the rest of us can all aspire to be like. You're so much of a presence that you're not bothered by these punks that might be drinking alcohol or whatever. You're just seeing the good in them, mm-hmm. and the potential that they have, mm-hmm. and embracing that. Mm-hmm. You look back at those early years and you're like, what was I doing? But some of the music's really good. And people didn't really notice that, to be honest, because it was so much about the identity of it, the story of it, the gimmick of it, that trying to be like, hey, we were making great music, it was kind of ignored. I
mean, there's so many overlaps in our stories, that I started out and was doing the music thing. And then after a few years, I started feeling like, man, am I losing myself? You know what I mean? So for me, it was making Hajj. My understanding is that when you went to Zaytuna, that was a search to reconnect and to.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it was a pretty dramatic, like I crashed out fully from that. I just didn't understand what I was doing because we were experiencing success, headlining shows in England and things like that. That I thought, this is exactly what I wanted, but I'm not happy. And I didn't understand why. I ended up quitting the band abruptly, moving home, and then slowly start realizing that there's something inside of me that is empty and needs to be filled. And I find it was Imam Sahib Sultan, Rahimahullah, that was the person that I met at that time that really changed things for me. So he was the chaplain at Princeton University. He was so welcoming, and it was at his sermons that I really felt faith entering my heart in a very big way, dramatic way. It became like a spiritual and intellectual awakening. All of a sudden, I wanted to read everything I could read. I just kind of went underground and really started enjoying anonymity and just disappeared because we were kind of well known in our little circle. And so people are like, what happened to that guy? And then I ended up going to Zaytuna College in Berkeley to study, to actually get a degree. So at age 30, I enrolled for a bachelor's in Islamic law and theology. So for 4 years, I just do that. What I felt like had happened in my life was that I lived a full kind of life cycle where I got to this level of success that I had dreamed about since I was young. And then I'm like, oh, I get to do it over maybe. So if I had to do it over, then maybe I get to really think about what is it that I missed.
Did your sort of foray into podcasting, did it start as Zaytuna?
Yeah, because I gave away all my musical instruments. But I was like, I have this audio background and I loved listening to podcasts. So initially I just wanted to make a podcast like about Muslims and like this kind of hidden world that I felt I had discovered. Because I grew up Muslim, but I didn't realize that there was so much to the religion and the history I just had no clue. And I thought it's one of those weird things where like you think you understand something and then you just feel like you've been hoodwinked.
It's one of the things that I say to people all the time is like, when people are like, yeah, I get it. Like I've looked into Islam. And I'm like, I guarantee that you have no clue. I was Muslim for 20 years and I converted to Islam. I felt the same way where like, man, you can be a Muslim your whole life and never realize this extremely deep and nuanced and dynamic intellectual tradition, spiritual tradition, artistic tradition. Like you said, the history is so amazing and it stretches out into places that you would never imagine. Like there's a really incredible history of Islam in Sicily. There's so much there that most Muslims nowadays don't even discover.
Yeah.
When I started to really come online was the American Submitter podcast, which I still to this day miss. Like I'm kind of mad at you for making me love that podcast and then abandoning it. But this podcast that I do, the Travelers Podcast, a lot of it started as long voice notes between you and I. And you saying like, man, you need to do a podcast. You should just put these voice notes out.
Oh my God, yeah. Those were great days. I mean, I remember I was like, these are like personal podcasts. You sent like a 20-minute voice note.
Yeah.
I'm like, I guess I'm going for a walk. But I loved it. So I think now everyone that listens to this podcast probably feels like, yeah, man.
You did some work on Dave Chappelle's podcast with Talib Kweli and Yassine Bey.
The Midnight Miracle. I mean, listening to hundreds of hours of people who I think are at the highest level of culture and art, just talking and thinking about life. That was life-changing, to be honest. Yeah. And you were there. You were there for some of those recordings and you were on some of those tapes.
Yeah, that was a life-changing moment for me too, being invited to Yellow Springs. And I was really at a low point, and I don't think it's any exaggeration to credit that. It was just there for a week, but I feel like it validated me in such a way that was like, man, these are the people that I look up to the most in culture as well, particularly Dave and Yassine. And for not only the two of them, but then all of the people that were around them to really be validating me in this way that was like, because I was really stepping outside of all of my, all of the the castles that I had built had become prisons or started feeling like prisons. And so like breaking out of all of them was such a big thing. What was it that led you to coffee specifically?
You know what? So we're talking about American Submitter. The last episode I ever did was with Ram Yusuf. Kind of tracks his artistic and spiritual journey. It just made me realize that I didn't want to be small and closed, and that there was a comfort to that I had really embraced because I had gone out into the world and I'd been burned by my own recklessness. If I just stay in this little bubble, I'll be safe. In a way, there's a part of Seekers and this coffee business that I've been doing that is trying to embrace the bigger thing. And it's informed by all of these experiences. I mean, it's informed by stuff that Yassine has said and Dave has said. And Yassine, a lot of what he was saying was stuff that Sheikh Hamza said. And I was studying at his school. And one is a practical thing. I was almost 40 years old, and I tried my hand at journalism, wasn't finding jobs. And I was like, okay, I got to start a business. Okay, what's the business going to be? Coffee was one of those things that had always been there, in those moments where you're broke. I can't afford like dinner, but I can afford like a nice pour over, and that's going to make me feel ennobled in some way. I actually came across this quote like from the 1500s, one of the earliest writings about coffee. It says Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jaziri, and he says, coffee is a poor man's best friend because it imparts this feeling of nobility upon them. I also saw this history of coffee where it brought people together naturally. It helped them connect. It helped the Sufis connect on a spiritual level, but it helped people connect on a communal level and a political level and so many cool things like that. There's something missing in coffee culture where it's like there's the commodity, fast, fuel, whatever, but then there's also the specialty, which is a lot of it is like, that's also nafs, that's also ego. Oh, well, I like this and I like these notes and I like...
Yeah.
And it feels like a trick, Maybe there's some kind of intervention here. There's an artistic middle. This is something that is beautiful and easy. And, if we look at the source and we look at the farm, a lot of it is too, like you look at the marketing they're done by the roasters. And who are the roasters? The roasters are people in the US. And so they're like, oh, we roast really great. Don't get me wrong. I study roasting. I'm a student of that art form and that craft. But to me, it's like, what's the dopest stuff that's happening is on the farm. And, I went to Colombia. I went and met farmers, and I saw that the general story has been that farmers' children, they just leave to the cities and they try to find jobs. But now with specialty coffee, they're going to these international coffee festivals and realizing, actually, we're sitting on something so amazing. And if we just change this and we put our coffee on raised beds and we do this, we can actually sell our coffee for more because there's a market for it. And so that to me is really exciting. And so I tried to bring in my journalistic background, my storytelling background to be like, let's highlight that because that is actually where the value is being added. It connects the third world, the quote unquote third world with the first world so directly, where it's like I'm WhatsApping dudes in Kenya, guys in Colombia and Guatemala. It's so cool. Like one of the guys in Kenya, I was WhatsApping him and he's like, oh, sorry, I didn't get back to you. I was at this protest. I just got tear gassed because like the news has nothing to say about that.
Yeah.
I just imagine this future where we can have these coffee shops where we serve these things and you feel connected to the people that actually made it. That's still something I'm chasing and trying to figure out how to do. Anyone who's tasted specialty coffee knows that there's always like notes. So like it tastes like blueberries or it tastes like, candied walnuts, or it's like all of the flavors of the world like that God created are in this bean. There's a way to like turn it into practice where you're like, it's just a moment of presence, you can have in your day.
Coffee is truly an art. a lot like music is. By that, I mean that we can seek mastery for our entire lives, the same way we do in the spiritual world, the same way masters of any practice do. Like they will be seeking mastery for their entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I can look at somebody like Yasin, and to me, that is an unequivocal master. Like he's one of the greatest MCs that ever lived. But in his mind, he's like, I haven't found it yet. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like it's still a constant practice for him. And the same is true with our spiritual masters. There are none of them that feel like they've arrived. Like we fly all over the world just to sit on the floor next to these people. And they really just ask everybody how they're doing for days. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I'll just sit here and
Yeah.
just because I want to just get a glimpse of this person's state.
Mm.
Most Muslims, the first exposure is like, I'm going to go to the mosque. Okay, well, you better not have a girlfriend. Your pants better not be too long. You better be washing your hands right. And you better be doing this thing right. And it's just like so surface and corny. The first interaction that a lot of people have with hip hop music is hearing some of the most stupid, degrading songs on the radio to the point where you memorize them. And to a lot of people, that is Islam, that is hip hop, that is, you know, the punk that you hear for the first time is on a Gap commercial. You know what I mean? Like your first experience is so corny. But then it's like, okay, well, what would it mean for me to get into the real thing? It's like intimidating because there's this like hedge of equally corny language, this whole like secret society that you have to be sworn into. Like, man, if I want to get into underground hip hop or get into specialty coffee or get into Sufism, pardon me for saying, but like what kind of douchebag am I have to become to enter this world? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do we mean when we talk about specialty coffee? Like, what's the way that you explain that to people?
There's a technical definition. It's something called a Q grade, which is like a quality out of 100, and anything above, I think it's 80%, is considered specialty coffee. But anecdotally, I think it's just one of the first things I had done was signed up for this Philly Coffee Festival, and we went there and I just made pour overs every day for 2 days, just serving it to people. And what was amazing to me was that it was like people were tasting this for the first time. Even though they're at the coffee festival, they didn't realize that coffee could taste sweet, not bitter, have all of these different notes. And the reason for that historically is that we have all drunk coffee that's just really bitter. And why is that? Because of a market reality. So they're not looking at craft at the level of the farm. They're just getting whatever they can for the cheapest price and then roasting it so that you don't taste any defects and you don't taste everything kind of tastes the same. So that's kind of the Starbucks, Dunkin' coffee that we all know, or like United Airlines coffee.
Oh man.
That's what we associate with black coffee. But I think it's one of those things you have to taste it to know. Like it's you can't really describe it. You have to say, I made you a cup of coffee, try it. And what I loved is actually, at first I was surprised because I thought I'm entering the specialty coffee arena and everybody knows what this means. But the people that get most excited about it are the ones who've never even tried it before. And it's like no one's trying to speak to them.
Right.
They're all just trying to speak to their own little circle.
Right.
You know, and no one's trying to recruit other people, say like, hey, you know what? You might like this. And they just would go in the coffee shop and order a Spanish latte or, you know, hazelnut, this and that. No one would ever invite them.
So let's really get to the invitation. So when we talk about, some people talk about third wave coffee, right? So is my understanding correct that like the stuff that you would get at a diner or a gas station, like what our parents grew up drinking, like that's coffee that's sourced from all over the place. They just buy it by the ton because they're cherries. Like it's an actual cherry. And because of the fact that there's almost no intentional thought being put into how it's grown, when it's picked, how it's fermented, how it's stored. So they basically just burn it and then they grind it And the second that you grind it, like it starts releasing all its flavor and it's like aromatics and stuff like that. And then they just pack it to be stored and shipped all over the world for countless amount of time. And so then the second wave was basically like when Starbucks came in, that there wasn't too much an improvement on that. But when we mean specialty coffee, we're usually talking about coffee cherries that, because of the fact that they come from a specific farm, like that farmer and their community, like whoever works with them, can basically dial in what's the best way to raise these trees or these berries. When's the best time to harvest them? What's the ideal circumstance for fermenting them? When is the best time to roast them? What's the best way to prepare them? And so by doing that, you end up bringing out flavors. Some people, if you say, well, like this has notes of blueberry, they're like, no, don't squirt any juice in my coffee. Like, no, you're actually tasting a cherry the same way, like you said, that you would taste wine. You know what I mean? So, I mean, do I have the basic idea of that correct?
Yeah, you do. I mean, it's actually funny because right now we're going through the Trump tariffs, and putting tariffs on something that doesn't grow in your country is so silly. It only grows in a certain area and in certain climates where, and the best ones are going to be the ones that are grown above like 1,400 meters. So pretty high up. Like you said, they're cherries. Most people don't realize that. We call them beans, but they're actually seeds. And so if you imagine a cherry, how does it grow? How does it ripen? If you take a cherry that's not ripe, it's going to be hard and it's not going to be sweet and it's not going to be well developed. And so 1/3 of the coffee in America comes from Brazil. Brazil is flat and these are really low ground. And so it's picked most of it's picked by machines. And so they mix ripe, unripe, and just, they do that roasting style of let's just make it all taste uniform. But what makes a coffee cherry actually really, really good is it's high up. It's receiving a lot of sun in the day. And then at night, it's very cold. So it's actually the stress that makes them more beautiful, which is something to reflect on, is that you don't know the potential of yourself until you put yourself in that situation. So what does that take? It takes a farmer. Usually the farmer's not living on the hill. They have to go up there and they have to plant it. And they have to go back every single day to make sure it's growing well and prune it. And so there's all that hard work that leads to that. And that's where we're getting something really, really special. But now we're kind of in this situation where the taxes on Brazil are 50%. And that's because Trump is upset that they got rid of the regime that he liked, and it's totally a political thing. So I don't know what happens now. Is it going to make the coffee that is commodity the same price as specialty coffee, and the specialty coffee go up because every other place is being taxed 10%? It's a very strange time. But in reality, I think the invitation is simply that, like, you've been given a caffeine vehicle that was very convenient for a long time. And that is the history of colonialism and exploitation. And everywhere that coffee is today is because of colonialism and exploitation. What's really, really cool about this moment of third wave and specialty coffee, there's a justice argument to this, which is like, give people dignity, give people craft. Don't let them just run machinery and have to farm thousands of acres in order to eke out a living. Let them do something where they bring their creativity, their energy, their beauty, and their hard work and make something that shows that value directly. Like, that is 100% an industry we should all aspire to support, I think.
So the idea for a lot of times with single origin, part of what makes it so dope, and to be clear for people, like when you're talking about those really high elevation places, I mean, you're looking at Colombia, Ethiopia, Yemen, you know what I mean? Those are kind of like the elite, the most elite. Is that right? Or are there ones that I'm missing?
There's so many now. This is what I've been finding that's so interesting. So we do a thing called a new origin subscription. So every month I'm looking at a different origin. And partially that's selfish because I want to learn. People think of Sumatran coffee, for example, in Indonesia as something dark, bitter.
I tried it a few times and I never tried it again.
Exactly. And I found this like group of young guys that are just doing the specialty thing over there. And such an amazing coffee. It tastes like there's like a spice to it and a sweetness to it. And, we're roasting very light. That's the other thing. It's hard to roast light. There's a craft to that because if you just roast light, you run the risk of not cooking the inside. So you have to approach the heat a certain way. It's really caramelization, what's happening. It's called the Maillard reaction. And it's like same thing happening in a steak, so you can have a charred steak or you can have like a soft, juicy, like well cooked. And that's what we're trying to do on the roasting side. But if coffee can grow in your region, and on the farm level, you're able to do this kind of specialty thing. We're finding that there are young people all around the world in this quiet revolution. I love it because, the term third world wasn't meant to be derogatory. It was supposed to be like, oh, there was the first world, and then there was the new world, which is like the second world. And then the third world was post-colonial period after World War II. A bunch of people came together at the Bandung conference. And they were like, we should have our own economy. We should support each other. We should, teach each other skills. It was such an amazing moment. And then a lot of stuff happens where regime change, CIA, that type of thing. But that's a long story.
When we're looking for specialty coffee, like for people who want to experience it, what are some of the places that you would recommend for people? I know when I first discovered it was Blue Bottle.
Yeah.
Kind of the earlier days of Blue Bottle, I think, when we were in the Bay. And it was like one of those things that we would gather and like make almost like a pilgrimage to Blue Bottle.
Yeah.
Like we couldn't necessarily go every day, but at least once a week, usually after Juma, like we would all go to Blue Bottle. The guy that owned it was really big on like, man, I'm never selling this. He got all these offers. And then he ended up selling it to Nestle, which was like, man, it was heartbreaking at the time.
Yeah, that's the big heartbreak of specialty coffee. And this is something that I'm sort of reckoning with as well, is that I think you see it also in music. You see it in a lot of things. Like people have ideals when they're young, but then you hit 50 and then you're like, I need to get paid. And so you just change. Nestle is an objectively evil company.
I mean, one of the worst in the world.
And Blue Bottle, I think, probably still has good coffee. Objectively, if you want to just taste what specialty coffee is, you can get that experience there. You can get a pour over. But that's where, you'd want people to look a little deeper. I think the best thing one could do is to, pretty much anywhere in the world you are now, there's going to be a local roaster who's like trying to do that. And I think it's worth looking into that and just going into those places, finding a knowledgeable barista. And maybe they're like, well, I don't really like the coffee here, but I have this stuff here. I'll make you some. I find that happens a lot.
Yeah. If they discover that you are either very knowledgeable or you're brand new and if somebody walks into the local masjid, to the local mosque, and they're like, yeah, I've really been wanting to look into this Islam thing. It's like, come with me, like, please. You know what I mean? You find somebody that loves it. It's like, to start a conversation in that way of saying, I've been hearing about specialty coffee. I don't even know where to start. Like, I need somebody to help me.
Yeah, people are really excited to talk about it. Baristas love it. I mean, this is something I think about a lot, and I'm trying to figure out on a business level how to make it make sense. But baristas are also underappreciated. And that's a craft that you can really get into. And like there's competitions. It also doesn't end.
Absolutely.
That's a problem if that job is just $15 an hour. Mm-hmm. But these are some really passionate people. I mean, in small towns, they're looking for a way to get out. Just like, when you're living in a small town, recording a mixtape, listening to your favorite albums or like that kind of thing. Like coffee is that for people. That's probably the thing that brought me into it more than anything else is like when I got into music, I was into bands and like the scenes and the places where there's like 30 people who are like, this is the most dope thing in the world happening right now, and the electricity that you feel. So that's what you find when people are like, because it's such a miraculous thing, getting that coffee grown, getting it shipped, getting it to you on time before it starts to stale, having it roasted well, and then having it brewed well in a certain time frame is such a unlikely thing. And when you're talking about specialty coffee, you're talking about each cherry was picked by hand, and how many cherries go into a single cup. It's really a miraculous thing when you sit to think about it. It's like that you actually had a beautiful cup of coffee. So many miraculous things had to happen for that to happen. I think what people might be picking up on is endless ways to reflect, and like making this a part of your day or a part of your life, where coffee is a moment to slow down, but it's also going to give you this really clean, beautiful energy, is amazing. I mean, for creative people especially, like if you wake up in the morning and you have coffee and you don't touch your phone, your brain is going to want to do something creative or it's going to start thinking like about something deeply. That's really why people go to coffee and why it all started. And a lot of it starts where you are right now in Istanbul, and the rise of the coffee shop. It's a fascinating history.
So like if somebody roasted something 2-3 days ago, like is it immediately at its best, or do you think that after the roasting process you should give it some time?
You have to rest it. The lighter the roast, the longer it has to rest.
Uh-huh.
So it's the thing about carbon dioxide. So if you roast longer, the bean gets more porous, and so it kind of stales or ages faster. And that's like when if people know about pour overs, there's this idea of a bloom. So when you just put a bit of water in it, it starts to bubble, and like so that bubbling is the carbon dioxide. Ideally, with our beans, it's actually like 2 weeks. It starts to get really good after 2 weeks. But the caveat to that is you have to keep oxygen away from it, because if oxygen gets into it, then it makes it still. But all of this is I mean, you were saying like, what's the invitation? I think the invitation for folks is find a coffee shop that's not a chain and that ideally roasts themselves. I mean, first of all, because this is going to be a place that has some kind of character to it. Like there's a person who like put their creativity and their energy into like, I want the seats to be like this, and I want the presentation to be like this, and we only play this kind of music, or we put these things on the wall. And there's something beautiful about seeing the diversity there, endless diversity there. Whereas like a place like Blue Bottle is like the Apple store.
Right.
That's why it can be corporatized.
And what's interesting too, so like in Istanbul, for example, there's like a community of people who know there's like 4 different roasters that are in this game. And because of the fact that, Istanbul has its own coffee culture, like Turkish coffee is a very different thing than what we're talking about. It's certain people that are looking for specialty, third wave, high elevation, light roast, pour over type of brew. So there's not a whole lot of traffic for that. You know what I mean? So for a while, like one of the companies, they'll be like, okay, these were good for about a month and now they're starting to get stale. So if you go there and you go get whatever Ethiopia they have at this moment, be like, oh yeah, have you tried this? Yeah, they were good. But these guys just got in a new Colombia thing that's crazy. That's what we'll all be drinking for a couple weeks. And there's WhatsApp groups that are like, well, what's the new thing? When we say a pour over, can you give us an idea for like the different ways that coffee is brewed?
Yeah, it's just like it's a filtered coffee. So it's just like your typical coffee machine, but imagine you're doing it by hand. You got a kettle, and we use a gooseneck kettle, which has a small spout so that you can control the flow. And really what you're trying to do is just get to every inch of the grounds and get the best taste out of it. And with technique, it's like, this is how I prevent it from getting the flavors I don't want. And these are how I get the maximum things I do want, whether it's sweetness or body or whatever. And it's a very cool, like on a personal level, as a home brewer, it's very cool because you can get the maximum different types of outputs from that. You can actually brew it to get more body. You can actually get it. I want this cup to taste, I just want the maximum clarity. I want to taste all those notes. And I actually come at it with from a music background. So I'm like, I like a cup that has bass and treble and I want to hear all the different notes separately. So the bass is like the body, and like the harmony is like those notes that are on top, and then there's like the acidity, which is like the mids. So I like that. I like that a lot.
And I mean, there's an artistic human touch to the way that each specific cup is brewed. Because I mean, for people that haven't experienced this, like the grind setting, you get like a nice like burr grinder, not like the one that you buy at Target or something like that. It's fine. And like if people are brewing at home and you just get to a place where you're grinding your own beans before you brew it, and maybe go to like a French press or something like that. If you're going from Mr. Coffee to something like that, it's going to elevate your coffee game immediately overnight. Like that's going to be a major step, and you do not need a special kettle for that. You don't need if you just get a scale, if you use really good water, it's one of the things that people don't realize. But when you start getting into pour overs, like to get those type of grinders, the difference between, if there's 100 different notches on like an Encore grinder, if you're grinding at 16 and you switch to 18, you're tasting a different cup of coffee.
Yeah.
If your water was 96 degrees Celsius and you go to 94, you're going to taste something different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just another layer and another level of the artistic, human, contemplative, meditative, spiritual touch that's going into the experience of drinking the coffee. And if you're doing it yourself, it really is an artistic, spiritual experience.
It is. Maybe by now we've fully lost people, but
Like I always tell people when they convert to Islam with us, I'm like, man, you don't have to change your name. You don't have to dress different. You don't have to wear weird smelling oil, grow a big beard. You don't have to start going to Morocco. But you're probably gonna want to. You know what I mean? Like once you dive in, it's so intoxicating. You're gonna want to do all of that stuff.
True,
but you don't have to do any of it.
Yeah. So the French press is like the 80% of the way. It's like it's the starter pack. It's great. Yeah. After that, it's just like, oh, I'm getting excited about this, and then the path is there for you to go fully.
And I would say for people too, always it's like, man, don't put anything in the coffee. Like just drink it black.
Yeah.
So that you can actually taste, the coffee, and so that you can start to develop your palate for being able to recognize, what's happening in the coffee.
I mean, I think it's also a detox from hyper palatable foods that we've been given since we were kids. Like everything is it's so intoxicating, like a wheat thin. It sounds like it would be such a healthy thing. It's a devastating concoction of chemicals that is delicious, but it makes it harder to notice more subtle things. So part of it is when you're first getting into it, you're like, the subtleties are hard. You're like, you said this tastes like blueberries. This just tastes bitter, or this just tastes like sour. And here's the other thing. It's like making coffee is, for all of this difficulty and all of the nuance, it's a lot easier than cooking. So it's like, it's just introducing the idea of like, you can do something for yourself. You can create something for yourself, and then serve it to people is like a whole nother dimension.
There's something about, the idea of seeking. And so I just want to really be able to make sure that we talk about the overall ethos of seeking. You also still have a podcast, like you can't help it. And the fact that you found the prayer for coffee, had a calligrapher do a rendering of it in Istanbul, and that's one of the offer. Like, man, I love coffee shop merch.
Yeah.
But the fact that you offer, something that you specifically source from the master calligraphers of Istanbul, and that you print on beautiful paper, and that you offer in different, you know what I mean? Like you offer all these different, I want to really hear you share about the overall ethos and the idea of seeking?
Part of it is is in my journey of being in all these different spaces and having a lot of time to think and look back and realizing that there's people in every aspect of that journey that I love. And what was it about those people that I loved? And 100% of the time, it was that these were people who felt alive, who were, whether they were seeking something that was worldly or they're seeking fame, they're seeking money, they're seeking truth, they're seeking art, they're seeking. There's something that's alive about them. And I think what's really hard about this time is that it was always this way. I mean, we were born into this world of distraction and it's gotten worse, of course. But you can just be a consumer your whole life and not have 2 seconds to think about, I'm alive and I'm going to die. And there's something I'm supposed to do here in this world. And that's just a devastating thing. So for me, it took me into religion and I wanted everyone to see the beauty in that. But then in that experience, I saw a lot of darkness where I didn't think I would see it. And that forced me to have to go to a different plane to be like, what is it that, who are the people I want to spend the rest of my life with and serving? And so this was the term that I came out with. Initially, it was just seeker. And then I realized that's the egocentric one.
Aha.
Right? And I realized it's only good if we do it together. That's the only way it's going to be good because we need each other to see each other. And so really, it's about the convening and the mutual kind of like two hands wash each other kind of idea that if Imran Ali Malik, the Muslim punk, can hang out with Amir Suleiman at that time, and that leads to me going down this path of study and Sufism, and then we meet again and it's like the same. Like that is the ethos. That is what it means to like love humanity, love the creator, have the humility to understand that like I think I'm right, but I might be wrong. I'm probably missing a lot and I need other people to fill in the details. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that we see that every beautiful like development that human beings produce that reminds us not only of like the deeper meaning of life, but also just what it means to be human. We talk about culture. You know, Yassine talks about this a lot in those hours of podcasting that I know you had the blessing of going through. The idea that there's a consumer product called entertainment, you know what I mean, is one of the greatest lies. You know, it's essentially the enslavement of the human creative reflection of the divine. You know, that like these things that are brought about are always brought about as communal realities. You know, somebody asked Yassine, like, how would you describe hip hop? And he said it's black folk music of this generation. It's always a reality that everything that reminds us of meaning itself, but particularly what's human, is something that comes out of community. We sing these beautiful like Arabic devotional songs, and sometimes people will like sing them in like, they'll like translate them into English, and I hate it because I'm always just like, is this supposed to be for me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is supposed to be for me? Because it's like, I've heard gospel music. And like in the English language, we're talking about reggae and gospel music. Like if we want music to actually bring our hearts to a place in the English language where we feel close to God, like gospel music is a cultural, communal thing that's been developed by people crying, surviving, suffering, thriving, celebrating, imagining together for centuries.
Yeah.
And that's why when they hit that particular chord in gospel, it's like, I don't care what your theology is. You got to go to Muhammad ibn al-Habib or something to get to that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And like one of the things that like global like monoculture does is it robs us of even the reality that we need community. Like so many people that are just part of the dominant culture, and you don't know that until are forced to have community because there's something about you that's not mainstream. So like so many of the white people that convert with us to Islam, it's like, man, I'm telling them, you got to get with community. Mm-hmm. I've almost never seen this work for people that don't get attached to community. Mm-hmm. But for people in the dominant culture where it's just like, well, you know, it's a difficult concept to convey to people. You know what I mean? Because it's like, well, this whole kind of dominant thing is just, but the second you enter into something where like, we're going to have to affirm this, I'm going to have to figure this thing out. You know what I mean? You get with people and you start really doing that. And it's messy and you get your heart broken over and over and over again. You know, but like you said, you also have these experiences of beauty that, like the fact that we were on this journey together, it really brings something out. Just like the journey of the beans and the harvesting and the roasting and the brewing and the shipping and you know what I mean? And the curation of it all. Like, man, it's nothing short of an enlightening, revolutionary force in every way. Like, you know, from the economics of it all to really like the way of seeing and being in the world that it promotes, man. Because I mean, the coffee is also, man, A1. Like it's world class.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And you did it in such a short period of time. Like, man, you're able to get extremely profoundly good at things so quickly.
I saw it at teachers, you know, I saw that because I know that it's a craft. I was like, I need to be an apprentice. And I found people that would teach me. It's part of what it was. But, this other thing about community that can really develop these things. And like, you actually have to be vulnerable and be yourself. Mm-hmm. The eye can't see itself. I don't know what I look like, really. I can see like a picture of myself, but I don't know what I really look like. And we have all had this experience of like hearing our voice recorded and be like, that's what I sound like. I mean, it must be very different for you as a rapper, but you know, that first time you hear yourself recorded, you're like, what is...
And most people hate it.
Yeah. Like, who's that person? But that's how you appear in the world.
You know, one of the things that's interesting, you know, you come across a lot of people that have these ideas in a bubble. For some reason, Uncle Sam Goddamn is a song that everybody projects their own political philosophy onto. I did not do that intentionally, but it's worked out pretty well for the most part. You come across people that have a very specific ideology. Sometimes they're conspiracy theorists, sometimes they're, you know, but they have a very hardcore ideology, and they can be very, very difficult to actually communicate with or be with. And the thing that I always suggest is like, find other people that feel the way you feel and just organize together to do something about it.
Yeah.
Because that process will smooth out your rough edges. And it usually will smooth out a lot of the specificity. You know, it's got to be this particular thing with these particular rules and, you know, that have this strictness. It's like, okay, get with some other people and build something that lasts longer than a few years. And have some kids and raise some kids together and see what that does to your ideology. You know what I mean? You know, to bring life to this stuff. Like Dr. Resmaa Menakem, the racial trauma expert, always says, I know a lot of really dope white individuals. I know a lot of white people that they got the right ideas, they got the right spirit, they got the right, but he's like, I know 0 white communal spaces that I feel comfortable in.
Wow.
He said the real work is to get together and build anti-racist white culture. Build culture together. He said it's going to take generations, and the first generation, you're going to try to blow each other's heads off. You're going to tear each other apart. You know what I mean? The anger that comes out in trying to do this with other people. When we talk about the Islamic tradition, you know, the fact that there is a comprehensive, cohesive, Scholars in the tradition have been talking about this stuff, challenging each other, responding to each other's challenges for 1,400 years.
Yeah.
And it gets negotiated. You know what I mean? Even as something that we believe is revealed by God, when it really comes down to like some of the details of this practice are absolutely negotiated. Allah left a portion of the delivery of the tradition to the negotiation of a community of scholars over the course of centuries.
In a healthy society, it's actually it's the brainiacs and the people of art, the heart. It's like the scholars and the artists. They both need to be searching for truth, because the scholar sees the truth in like differentiating things. And the artist sees the truth in very particular things, in individuals, in like a leaf, they see the connectedness of everything. So we need that. Like we need that integration in our own selves, but like we need each other. And I think that it's becoming way more important. Like it's always been important, but the world we're about to enter. I don't know how much you're tracking this whole AI conversation, but it's about to be a profoundly confusing time where the world is going to be fully different in 3 years and 5 years and in 10 years. And the world our children are growing up in, completely unrecognizable. So all I can think of to do is to just lean in as much into what makes humans human. It's already been like that. I mean, your own career, when you started out, you weren't making content, there was no idea about content. And the whole reason to put these messages and these ideas into a musical, lyrical form was like, this is a way that it travels and it can find the people that need to hear it. And when it does, that's also a miraculous thing. Mm-hmm. And then you go to like Madison, Wisconsin, and you're like, this guy's like, oh my God, we were resonating on this frequent. It's a magical thing.
Absolutely.
Right. And so like, what is that going to be now? Is it like, because I'm studying this, like we're doing like content now, and I'm studying like short form content. And it's like, you look at these graphs of retention and you're like, people are like, oh, if you don't hook them in the first 3 seconds, they're gone. And like, phew, there's nobody there. And it's like, and people are swiping before it finishes. It's like, we have no attention span whatsoever. And so how can you formulate a thought? So to me, like the most radical thing we can do is find a way to slow down, whether it's coffee or something else, or like actually listen to the lyrics of this song that's being written. You need to have friction in your life. And we have to, maybe that's what it is to be a seeker, is like you're seeking friction. You're leaving the comfort of whatever it is to be like, this ain't it. I don't know what it is, but I have to go find it, because I'd rather die than just stay here. That to me is beautiful. That to me is a human thing that we got to encourage people to take the journey, like whatever your journey is, just please.
One of the things that I noticed is like every person I know that does this for a long period of time, like gets on stage and has tried to create art and then present it to people, and especially does it in some sort of communal setting. There's a period, because they say like it'll ruin your life, and at the beginning period, all of us have to struggle with like, what does it mean to go from being a face in the crowd to being on stage where everybody is looking at me, and that is a dangerous moment for everybody. I don't know anybody that makes it through unscathed. You know what I mean? And the scholars go through it too. I mean, Imam al-Ghazali swept the masjid for a reason. Mm-hmm. And he's like, he's the most famous scholar in the world is sweeping the masjid. And then he's like, I think I'm ready to go back. And he hears two people debating. And one of them quotes him, not knowing that he's standing right there. And he's like, oh, dope. Yeah, I'm still the man. And he's, oh, I'm not ready. You know what I mean? I'm not ready. I need to sweep the masjid for longer. Wow. But everybody that I know that does it over the period of like as a lifetime endeavor, they become beautiful. I'm talking about R.A. the Rugged Man is beautiful. I'm talking about Immortal Technique is beautiful.
Mm.
I'm talking about, and and there may be, there are some that I'm probably not thinking of that lose themselves and like they never come back, or maybe they get so entitled that it destroys them. Like it does that for people too. But I know a lot more people that dedicating themselves to that level of like expression and vulnerability in a group setting and in a community. And then also you got fans that have been seeing you for 20 years, 30 years. You know what I mean? I've had fans tell me like, man, I love where you're at so much now. There were times where the way you were talking about politics, it was hard to go to your shows for about 5 years. Because they've been going for 23 years.
Wow.
There was a 5-year period, just like in a marriage, like sometimes in a marriage, there's like 4 years that are horrible. You know what I mean? Like these 4 years are just, but in a 30, 40-year marriage, it's like, it's the equivalent of a day out of the month that was a bad day.
What is it about the function of time that's makes people beautiful in that endeavor?
Man, I think it's just the amount of times a person has to face themselves or has the opportunity to face themselves. And, you know what I mean? To persist and to get over the hump and to stay engaged and to stay present.
I mean, I did it for 3 years, right? And I think it's really funny to think about what happened to me because I fully was intoxicated by the experience of having people look at me on stage and performing. And it's really funny because you think about like, like the bulk of your life is like humiliation. You're traveling, you got no money, like you're nobody, you're nothing. And then like for like 45 minutes, and your ego is like, I'm the man. But then you got to go back to your hotel room and you got to go home.
Yeah. You're also a great like connector that you've, supported, worked with, and collaborated with so many of the great Muslim artists, from our community. But like you've seen this thing where like inside this room, I'm the most important I'm famous inside this room.
Yeah.
After this show, I get off stage, I walk 1 block in any direction. I'm insane. Like, 'cause why are you so sweaty? Like, why does it look like you peed your pants? You know what I mean? Like, you look like you pissed yourself. And it's like, no, I was just on stage. You weren't there, but like, man, and the other thing, they were cheering my name. I stage dived at one point. You know what I mean? There's a clip of Jay-Z one time where he decides to ride the train. They're like opening the Barclays, and so he did 7 shows, I think, a week of shows at the Barclays. And he's like, one of the days he rides the train, and there's security with him and stuff. And there's this really sweet elder white lady who's like, "Are you famous?" And he's like, "Yes, ma'am, I'm a rapper." She's like, "Oh, and you made it?" And he's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, I'm very proud of you."
So sweet.
And she says, what's your name? What do you go by? And he's like, Jay-Z. And she's like, "Oh, I've heard of Jay-Z. Are you Jay-Z?" And he's like, "Yes, ma'am." This is so sweet. It's on YouTube. Like, so sweet. But like even Jay-Z, you know what I mean? I guarantee there's times where Dave Chappelle or Kanye West or like whoever, Taylor Swift or somebody, there's places on this block that I'm on right now. Like if people could walk down the street, no one would have any clue who they are.
But even the most famous of famous people, it's like one generation and nobody knows who that was.
Right.
Very few people really endure. And so I think it's like that. I think there's a lot of parallels in the artistic and spiritual path is like, you just got to keep doing the thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And let it humble you.
Yeah.
Whether it's coffee roasting or something, some other craft. The beginning of it is that you don't know what you don't know. And then when you figure out, oh, there's all this stuff I don't know. And then you realize there's just more and more and more and more. I think like our lifespan, there's something beautiful about that. We kind of live in this cult of like youth energy, like where, when you're young, you just expend yourself. And then, when you're older, you just kind of like, now you have kids and you're middle-aged and you're irrelevant. And I found in the Islamic tradition, one of the most heartening things that's a little bit of like an anti-Western approach to this is like you actually get more beautiful with age. You can.
Yes.
Like you can.
Yes.
It's possible.
Yes. Yes. Imam Malik wanted to be a singer, and his mother told him, you shouldn't do that. She said the two things about that is like, you don't have the looks to be a singer. And also, if you're a singer, then that fades with age. But if you be a scholar, you only get better with age.
Yeah. I think of the scholar and the artist as the most pure example of seekers needing each other. Like you're killing it in that arena and I'm killing it in this arena, and we need each other.
Absolutely.
In the Islamic tradition, the intellect is the brain and the heart.
Yes.
And even linguistically, the word for brain in Arabic means to cut up into pieces. And it's like it differentiates everything. It sees the categories. It'll make endless lists. But the heart sees how things are connected. And when you purify your heart, actually following your heart is what you want to do. What the scholar wants to do also has to purify their heart. It's the same thing with like when you first get on stage, what's the thing that we're talking about? Arrogance. When you're a scholar, like arrogance is the thing that will creep in without you even trying. But what does God say? You can't enter heaven with even an ounce of arrogance in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? So like, I'm not safe yet.
Right.
Far from it. Like we do need each other, and it's actually the evil. It is the devil that will make us not want to be together. Will want us to put us in silos so that you don't see each other. That's the most dangerous thing. Imagine a society where you have righteous scholars hanging with righteous artists. That's a dangerous concoction right there. Mm-hmm. You will change the world. That's what that does. And we've seen it in like the 60s. We've seen it in like movements. And every single time that happens, there are evil forces that will try to break it apart.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I mean, we look at the period of hip hop that I love the most, like that made me, want to do this. All these great hip hop artists, usually they're connected directly to Minister Farrakhan or to somebody else that's in their circle. So, X-Clan was connected to a movement, like a movement on the ground, the Black Watch movement. And then you had so many that were directly connected to scholars that they also had an awareness that my intention is to be like a microphone to amplify like what these scholars and to put it in a way that people can dance to it, appreciate it, understand it, articulate it. Yeah, man, absolutely incredible. Well, man, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it. I mean, we could go on and there's so many more things that I want to ask you about, but you've been really generous with your time.
Okay.
Love you a lot, man. Talk soon, inshallah.
All right, man. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you.